Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of At the Coalface Live with me, Jason Greenwood, your host. And it is the 10th, Friday, the 10th of December, 2021. It is awesome to be here with you again today. I'm sorry, a few minutes late. I was on a business call I couldn't get off of. So it is awesome to be here with you on this beautiful Friday afternoon here in Auckland. It's a nice sunny day here. We're coming into summer, and it's definitely getting very, very warm, very humid, and definitely it feels like we've turned the corner from a weather perspective. So well and truly getting into summer now. It's awesome to have you along for the ride today. And as per usual, if you have any questions, any comments, etc., drop them into the live stream, particularly on LinkedIn. And then once we get through the news, then we can come back to that. We can chat about anything that you like, a bit of an Ask Me Anything session at the end of the live stream if you wish. So I'll go ahead and jump straight into the news of the week that sort of stood out to me and made waves this week. And we'll start with the retailer news of the week. And this one comes out of Australia. It comes out of internet retailing. And the headline was Toys R Us Australia, obviously, rides Black Friday boom, but delivery delays bite. Now, obviously, Toys R Us has got a very, very complex global brand ownership model. They imploded in the United States. They declared bankruptcy. Then globally, they've had different issues. The Australian arm of the business apparently didn't go bankrupt, and they've got a brand licensing agreement there. Parts of the American business have been chopped up and resurrected a couple of times since they initially declared bankruptcy. In Southeast Asia, apparently they're still active. So it's always hard to put your finger on exactly what's happening in any given country at any given time around the Toys R Us brand. But apparently they've continued to do very well in Australia. They've continued to grow their brand cache in Australia, and this would allude to further brand growth. But like many, many other brands out there, they are really, really struggling with logistics. And we will see a few stories that I refer to today talking about exactly that and talking about how specifically certain retailers are doing logistics better than others and how it's impacting their business and how it can either be an absolute brand weakness or it can be an absolute brand strength, depending on how brands handle it. So what they've called out here is it says Toys R Us saw online sales jump 139% during November this year, obviously driven by the success of its Cyber Week sales. Invoice sales revenue hit 4.09 million during the month, while the actual number of orders jumped 81% to 31,200. That's a significant number of orders. That's over 1,000 orders a day, obviously. Average order values also improved, hitting 121.40, a 30% improvement on the same time last year. While the sales increase was welcome, it also meant Toys R Us had to delay the implementation of a next-day delivery service to 1Q 2022, as it believes such a service would be an unacceptable risk to already busy operations. Despite challenges arising from delivery delays to our shoppers and associated order backlogs, we're pleased with the strong growth rate of Toys R Us, a tribute to the effort and cohesive teamwork of our employees, said Louis Mittoni, CEO and Managing Director of the business. It's currently focused on executing important future goals, including the completion of the current trading period that extends through New Year sales, construction of the new 19,650 square meter e-commerce fulfillment facility in Victoria, and expansion into the UK. Toys R Us has been working out of a temporary warehouse in Dandenong South since July, putting a strain on its ability to fulfill orders, while its new fulfillment facility is built, an issue which meant it failed to grasp earnings growth last year. So clearly what they've recognized is in order for them to be able to capitalize on this e-commerce boom generally, that it's absolutely a rising tide floating all boats, they have to get logistics right. They have to hold enough stock, but not enough stock. And I'll refer to another story very shortly where a brand is absolutely being punished for holding too much stock. So whilst I think in general we're moving away from a JIT or a just-in-time logistics model worldwide, because I think that the pandemic has proved that just-in-time does not work when we have these black swan type of events. And so therefore we're moving more towards an almost just-in-time. So we're not expecting everything to be back to back to back, from manufacturing to shipping to internal domestic logistics into internal logistics, internal warehousing, internal distribution, and then last mile to the customer. Whilst I don't think just-in-time works across that entire supply chain, I think there are areas where you can be just-in-time, areas where a distributor or the manufacturer might hold a certain amount of stock a wholesaler or a distributor might hold a certain amount of stock, and then you have retailers holding a certain amount of stock. Or if it's a brand that's doing D2C, then obviously at certain waypoints, certain countries, certain shipping, transshipping items under bond in specific countries to get them through customs quicker and transiting quicker. There's lots of creative ways in which brands can do this better. But I think if we look at this quite holistically, we are very much clearly moving away from a just-in-time global supply chain, because that simply does not create enough redundancy. It does not create enough resiliency. And as we have seen, that creates catastrophic problems internationally when we have black swan type of events that are, maybe once in a generation or once in a decade or, once in 25 years. When we have these types of very, very large scale systemic events that impact global economies at scale, just in time, simply does not work. So I guess the key here is to watch what the brands like Target in the United States, like Amazon. There are some very, very large brands doing logistics very, very well. And even if you are a smaller business that does not have the money, the power, the resources of an Amazon or a Target, it does not mean that you cannot start to build resiliency into your supply chain. Even if you really only deal with last mile supply chain, having multiple delivery carriers that you work with, if you realize that one is suffering and one has capacity, then you can rapidly adjust and shift to the different carriers that have capacity. That's also true of the middle mile. And obviously, when you're working with your manufacturers, having them hold more stock so that you can then hold more stock. These are ways in which you can start to buffer your ability to ride out these black swan events. So keep an eye on logistics, because it is a game changer for the ones doing it well. That leads into our next article, which came from Inside Retail. It's that Kukai turns to Avery Dennison to boost supply chain and omnichannel capabilities. Global fashion retailer Kukai has cut inventory counts from a few days to 30 minutes as a result of implementing radio frequency identification, or RFID, at its manufacturing facilities in Fiji and Sri Lanka. The project is at the heart of Kukai's omnichannel strategy, which ultimately will lead to all clothing in stores being equipped with RFID, enabling it to precisely track all items within its supply chain, speed up checkout times, enable online orders to be fulfilled from local stores, and provide consumers with extra information about the products they enjoy via new interactive experiences. Kukai has tagged all garments it manufactures with an integrated RFID printed fabric label, or PFL, catering for multiple languages. In partnership with Sensormatic Solutions TrueView cloud platform, Avery Dennison has been able to offer an RFID solution that is able to capture and manage the item level data, enabling the brand to track inventory process from production to quality control and then to finished goods. This has delivered dramatic productivity improvements, and at their Fiji factory, Kukai, data indicates that 30,000 items can be counted in just 30 minutes, a process that used to take a few days. Now, they go on to talk about RFID and its impact across the remainder of its supply chain. And when you start thinking about the power and the impact of RFID combined with Internet of Things, combined with 5G, when we start thinking of all of these things combined together, and as well as digital twin technology that's being released by the likes of Google and very large other, Amazon has talked about releasing its new end-to-end supply chain digital twin technology within hosted by AWS. So all of the major cloud providers are starting to get into digital twin technology, which allows you to have a digital equivalent dashboard effectively of every single part of your supply chain, all the way down to individual components, individual assembled goods, items as they go through the manufacturing process, as they go through the warehousing process, the dispatch process, as they enter the global supply chain, whether it be shipping or air. And so what this means is that we're going to slowly but surely move to a place where, a manufacturer, for example, would tell a retailer, oh, we've shipped your goods on this date. Here's a tracking number. And then from the point where it got loaded onto the container ship, the next scan would be when it arrived in the port of entry, where it was going to enter whatever country it was going to enter into. Then it would hit middle mile, whether that be trucking a train, and then they might get a scan when it arrived at the final destination sorting center, and then when it was on the way to the retailer. That is not good enough anymore. That is not good enough for brands to be able to understand exactly where every single component in their supply chain lives at any given point in time. And the combination of RFID, IoT, and all of the global communication technologies combined with digital twin technology, automatic scanning technology as things enter into containers and as containers enter ships and as ships make their way across the ocean with GPS tracking enabled across them, we are going to see a dramatic change in the way that the global supply chain is managed. Right now, it is an absolute disaster. I don't think anyone would deny that. Sorry about that. I didn't realize that that was so far up. Hopefully, you've been able to hear that. But anyways, we're in a situation where the global supply chain is an absolute disaster. And so with these new technologies, what that means is that when we have a combination of IoT, RFID, and we have global tracking via GPS, when we have tracking on ships, on planes, right from the factory floor all the way to the final destination, ports of entry, and everything in between, including middle mile and last mile, I think what we're going to see is we are going to see a situation whereby the global supply chain starts to get into a better position than what it has been over the last 6 to 12 months, where it's been an absolute mess along the way. So it's interesting to see how Kukai has almost turned, as worked with Avery Dennison. I don't know, maybe they got a discount or something like that by being their partner. It's almost like an advertorial, but it was giving some insights into how they're leveraging this new supply chain technology and how it's improving every facet of their supply chain, right from the manufacturing floor and warehousing all the way to the shop floor. So very, very interesting story. Go and check that out on Inside Retail. The title was Kukai Turns to Avery Dennison to Boost Supply Chain and Omnichannel. So good on them. Exciting times for them. Now, the next one, the next retail story comes out of Honey Burdett, and this is an Inside Retail story. Honey Burdett's advertisement degrading to women from the Ad Standards Authority. So Honey Burdett, which is an Australian lingerie brand, a very famous Australian lingerie brand, famously female founded and female run, recently was acquired by Playboy. And so it's now part of the Playboy group. Apparently, they have been targeted for breaching the Australian Association of National Advertisers Code of Ethics. Apparently, they broke several sections of the code which relate to explicit language, using sex appeal in an exploitative or degrading manner, and treating sex, sexuality, and nudity with sensitivity. The business didn't respond to the breach and didn't respond to the Ad Standards Community Panel's decisions that its advertising, which showed a woman wearing a collar in lingerie, is objectifying and degrading to women and was inappropriate for display in a public space. The panel said that while it appeared that the women in the advertisement was voluntarily taking part in a consensual act between adults, it also implied the woman was being treated as property by the other individual who is not in the frame. And according to Mumbrella, Honey Burdett has previously been found in breach of ad standards and said that it had never intended to create controversy with its advertising. They couldn't be further from porn style, the brand said itself at that time. We are a company run by women for women who firmly believe in female empowerment. Now, look, as a non-female and as somebody who doesn't wear lingerie, but who is recently married and who has an appreciation for women, has an appreciation for the female form, has an appreciation for my wife, has an appreciation for lingerie. Look, I haven't seen this ad by Honey Burdett. You know, I've seen other social media because they're massive on social media. You pretty much can't traverse social media without seeing some form of advertising from Honey Burdett. They have, you know, they work with a massive amount of influencers. They do social very, very well. So, you know, most everyone at some one point or another would have seen a Honey Burdett ad. And if I was to compare Honey Burdett with some of the other major global lingerie brands, you know, if we were to compare it with Fredericks of Hollywood, or we were to compare it with any other major lingerie brand, I can't remember ever seeing anything that stood out to me as being, ooh, that's racy, ooh, that's dodgy, ooh, that's maybe, you know, cutting it a little bit close to the bone in terms of skirting that line of decorum or respect for women. I can't remember ever seeing an ad that I thought stood out to me as being offensive or degrading to women. You know, again, they say that they're a women's owned run brand. Obviously, they're part of Playboy Group now, but the founder of the company apparently stayed on as effectively the brand manager of Honey Burdett. So, you know, clearly, I suspect that all the advertising and everything still runs through her. So I'm, you know, I haven't seen this specific advertisement. I haven't seen the poster in question. So I can't really comment on just how degrading it may seem to women. But as I said, compared to some of the other advertising that I've seen out there from some of the other lingerie brands, Honey Burdett's has tended to be far more tasteful, far more sexy, but maybe not sexual, if I can use that terminology. So, you know, very interesting that they're being called out here as being degrading to women. So Obviously, the market will decide what they think of the Honey Birdette brand, especially now that they are nested underneath the Playboy group, and whether that is going to hurt their brand in the long term. Whether females will no longer buy that brand because they feel that it is degrading to women or has been degrading to women, versus men buying that lingerie maybe for their partner or significant other. We'll see what this does to their brand in the long term, but I suspect that they're probably going to shrug this off because they're very, very clear about their branding in the market. They've always been pretty consistent in the way that they present their brand to the market. So I'd be surprised if this has any massive long-term adverse impacts on their brand. Now, if we move forward into e-com and omni-platform tech and news, again, as I mentioned last week, not any massive news coming out of any of the major e-com platforms. However, there was a piece of news from Charge Retail, which I think came out yesterday, which is that Klarna launches browser extension, opening up payment solutions to every online store. Now, Klarna is obviously a very, very famous buy now, pay later service / platform. And apparently, they've launched a brand new browser extension, which will enable consumers to use the fintech giants' payment solutions at every single online store, even if they are not a partner. Now, this is quite amazing, given the fact that all of your global online stores, they use different technologies, they use different platforms. They don't all use the same e-commerce platform, so they're not all running Shopify or BigCommerce or Salesforce Commerce Cloud or Magento. They're running different platforms, and so for this to be able to be made to work with pretty much every single platform out there it's no mean feat. Let's put it that way. And it says the extension is finally launched after being beta tested with over 100,000 consumers. Users can install the extension on Google Chrome and Microsoft Edge, with plans to roll out to Firefox and Safari browsers in the future. Consumers in the UK, US, Germany, and France are able to access the new feature, which will be powered by Piggy, Klarna's recent browser extension acquisition. Klarna has said that it will open up the service to other markets in due course. And while mobile shopping is surging, we also see that many consumers still enjoy the comfort of browsing and comparing items on a larger desktop screen. And we want to offer consumers the world's best shopping and payments experience, no matter what device they are using. And they said online retailers are constantly looking for ways to reduce cart abandonment and improve the checkout experience, especially during the crucial holiday shopping season. With this partnership, we open the door for tens of thousands of retailers to tap into Klarna's growing base of 90+ million high-intent shoppers. So good on Klarna. Buy now, pay later, obviously the darling of the century, it seems, in terms of payment methodologies. It seems like all of these BNPL services, they are being sort of they're moving beyond productization, and they're now becoming just a feature set of larger fintech platforms. And so it remains to be seen how Klarna, as a more standalone platform, what they will do. They seem to be doing partnership deals with other payments platforms such as Square and Stripe. So let's just see how this one plays out for Klarna as they go more direct to consumer with their offering, without the consumer having to actually download their app to be able to use that service on the desktop. So very interesting technology coming out of Klarna. Good on them. I may have to give this a go and see how seamless it is on a range of different websites. Now, as we move on to marketplace news, Amazon is making its own containers and bypassing supply chain chaos with chartered ships and long-haul planes. And this report comes out of CNBC. I have been speaking about Amazon and its supply chain prowess for many years, and they continue to impress. They continue to dominate. They continue to do things that no one else is willing to do. They continue to make bets that other brands simply either cannot or will not make, because those brands either don't have the stomach for it, or they do not have the cash for it, or both. So it's very interesting to see Amazon continue to grow its prowess across all facets of supply chain. And this article called out that Amazon has been quietly chartering private cargo ships, making its own containers, and leasing planes to better control the complicated shipping journey of an online order, and they've been doing it for years. Now, as many retailers panic over supply chain chaos, Amazon's costly early moves are helping it avoid the long wait times for available dock space and workers at the country's busiest ports of Long Beach and Los Angeles. Los Angeles, there's 79 vessels sitting out up to 45 days waiting to come into the harbor. Ocean freight analyst Steve Ferreira told CNBC in November, Amazon's latest venture that I've been tracking in the last 2 days, it waited 2 days in the harbor versus so other vessels were waiting up to 45 days. Amazon's vessels waited 2. Now that is an order of magnitude faster, obviously. And he said, by chartering private cargo vessels to carry its goods, Amazon can control where its goods go, avoiding the most congested ports. Who else would think of putting something going into an obscure port in Washington and then trucking it down to LA? Most people are thinking, well, just bring the ship into LA, but then you're experiencing those 2-week and 3-week delays. So Amazon's really taking advantage of some of the niche strategies that the market needs to employ. Ferreira said. Amazon has seen a 14% rise. Despite this, Amazon has seen a 14% rise in out-of-stock items and average price increases of 25% since January of 2021, according to e-commerce management platform Commerce IQ. The consumer has been feeling price increases in everything that they're purchasing, said Margaret Kidd, Supply Chain and Logistics Technology Program Director at the University of Houston. Amazon has been on a spending spree to control as much of the shipping process as possible. Now, these numbers are just staggering. Go and check out this article if you have not. It will blow your mind. They say that Amazon spent more than $61 billion on shipping in 2020, up from just under $38 billion in 2019. So they went from $38 billion to $61 billion. So we're talking, it's a roughly 75% increase. That is phenomenal. Amazon is shipping 72% of its own packages, up from less than 47% in 2019. And it's even taking control at the first step of the shipping journey by making its own 53-foot cargo containers in China. Containers are in short supply, with long wait times and prices surging from less than $2,000 before the pandemic to $20,000 today. So that's a tenfold increase. So that's phenomenal. Amazon has produced probably 5,000 to 10,000 containers over the last 2 years. I've been tracking it, Ferreira said. When they bring these containers into the U.S., once they unload them, guess what? They get to be used in the domestic supply chain system and the rail system. They don't have to return them to Asia like everyone else does. A cargo vessel called the Star Ligra called at the Port of Houston on October the 5th, 2021, filled with Amazon containers. And by creating their own containers, they are essentially guaranteeing that equipment is going to be available for them, said Lauren Began, maritime lawyer and founder of Squall Strategies. She was working at the Federal Maritime Commission when Amazon first registered with the agency in 2015. The first indication it was exploring its own ocean freight business. And in 2017, Amazon started quietly operating as a global freight forwarder through a Chinese subsidiary, helping move goods across the ocean for its Chinese sellers who pay to be part of the Fulfilled by Amazon program. Internally, Amazon dubbed this Project Dragon Boat. They are doing over 10,000 containers a month of the small and medium-sized Chinese exporters. Amazon's volume as an ocean vendor, that's right, you heard me correct, they're considered an ocean vendor now, would rank them in the top 5 transportation companies in the Trans-Pacific, Ferreira said. A handful of other retailers, such as Walmart, Costco, Home Depot, IKEA, and Target, are also chartering their own vessels to bypass the busiest ports and get goods unloaded sooner. So we're seeing a bifurcation happen right across the whole of retail. We're talking the absolute largest global retailers in the world starting to make their own ships, make their own containers, charter their own ships, and in fact, even repurpose ships that never ever were intended to be container ships, but because of commodity slowdowns in other areas, they've been able to repurpose those vessels as container ships. And so what they called out was these ships used to be lumber, chemical, grain, agricultural product ships. But because of the ingenuity and creativity and lack of space, Amazon and many other smart people have quickly figured out how to convert some of these multi-purpose vessels to container ships, Ferreira said. So it is really, really interesting to see how global supply chains are reorientating themselves around this new normal where e-commerce is driving growth and it's driving shipments direct to consumer from all over the world. And therefore, shipping and supply chains are being put under strain all over the world. Just such an interesting time to be in this space, such an interesting time to be watching how supply chains adapt and change and morph as we start to adapt to these new normal levels of shipments globally. Now, moving on to social media platform news. If we look at TikTok, and this is from Charged Retail out of the UK, TikTok airs first ever UK shopping live stream. They've aired their first online UK shopping live stream, and they have tapped into the growing trend of social commerce in the UK. While the video sharing platform is famous for its lip syncing videos, blah, blah, it is now producing live stream shopping events where consumers can purchase items directly through the app. We think it's a really significant moment. E-commerce is a big opportunity for TikTok, and it's something we're investing in significantly. TikTok UK General Manager Rich Waterworth told the BBC, consumers are increasingly looking to social media to purchase goods. The former was releasing its Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat are dipping their toes in the space of live streaming, and which means that Facebook or Meta and Facebook Shops Marketplace in 2020 allows businesses to create digital storefronts on their platform. And a number of social commerce shoppers in the U.S. grew from 25% to 80 million from 2019 to 2020, according to a report from Business Insider. That number is expected to grow more than 100 million by 2023. TikTok broadcasted its first live stream shopping event over Black Friday. However, it is now producing and hosting its own two-day event presented by Riley and Clark Neal with influencers, music, and a quiz. People who have shared interest or a shared love for a creator or product area, these communities come together and make the experience of finding and enjoying those products more interesting, water-worth added. So when you bring these together, the power of TikTok, community, and brand, it's really exciting. Social media platforms get a cut from sales that are made through their sites. TikTok has more than 1 billion monthly global users. Wow, that's a staggering number. And internal data shows that 1 in 4 users either research a product or make a purchase after watching a TikTok video. So the power of video, the power of live streaming, the power of live stream shopping, and the power of TikTok on display here. Absolutely phenomenal numbers coming out of the UK already. So it's going to be a very, very interesting thing to watch, because if we compare the UK to, say, the United States, or the UK with Australia, or the UK with New Zealand, the UK was already streets ahead pretty much of the rest of the West when it comes to e-commerce adoption in terms of penetration of total retail. UK even pre-pandemic was already up around that 30 percentile mark, whilst the United States was languishing around 20%, Australia around 15%, New Zealand around 9%. So UK was already streets ahead. So it makes absolute sense to me that they would be at the cutting edge of live stream shopping through TikTok. So definitely let's keep an eye on this and see where this lands ultimately. Now, moving into financial news, Australia is to regulate crypto and BNPL in payments overhaul, and this came from Reuters. And I've been talking about the fact that we've watched China as the sort of canary in the coal mine in terms of crypto regulation. Obviously, in China, it's now been banned. China is going to be releasing its own CDBC, which is the CBDC, central bank digital currency. They're already talking about that, and they obviously want no threats to its sovereignty as a national fiat currency, and so therefore they've simply canned crypto in China and banned crypto mining as well. So I see regulations coming across the world, and I've said the same about BNPL, buy now, pay later in Australia. This was foreshadowed a long, long time ago, and I believe that was one of the impetuses for the likes of Afterpay to be bought by Square, to sell themselves to Square and sit fairly and squarely underneath that larger fintech umbrella versus being a standalone platform, because I think they realized massive regulation is coming to buy now, pay later. They are credit products, despite what anybody says and despite what they themselves would say. And I suspect that the major card schemes, the Visas and the MasterCards of the world, were complaining vociferously into the ears of regulators in Australia. So we kind of all thought that this was eventually going to come, but apparently it is here. It says that Australia will create a licensing framework for cryptocurrency exchanges and consider launching a retail central bank digital currency. So there you go. They're calling that out right there as part of the biggest overhaul of its payments industry in a quarter of a century. A CBDC, or a central bank digital currency, is also being talked about in New Zealand. And I suspect that that will be here probably within the next 12 to 24 months as they continue to digitalize the entire global currency in preparation for a global one world currency, which is obviously the ultimate goal there. In Australia, they will broaden their payment laws to cover online transaction providers like Apple Inc. and Alphabet Inc.'s Google, as well as buy now, pay later providers like Afterpay, ending their run of operating without direct supervision. As I said, I've been talking about this for a couple of years now. And they said, if we do not reform the current framework, it will be Silicon Valley that determines the future of our payments system. Treasurer Josh Frydenberg said in a prepared speech supplied to Reuters, Australia must retain its sovereignty over our payments system. Australia's Conservative coalition government has been at the forefront of global efforts to rein in large technology companies as it prepares for a federal election by next May. The Liberal National Government, which is behind the left-leaning Labour Party in most polls, has already this year made big tech pay media companies for content and take legal liability for defamation on their platform. The government will begin a consultation early next year on establishing a licensing framework for digital exchanges, allowing the purchase and sale of crypto assets by consumers within a regulated environment, Frydenberg said in his remarks. There will also be a consortium or a consultation on a regulatory regime for businesses that hold crypto assets on behalf of consumers, and on the feasibility of a central bank digital currency, he added, with advice to be provided by the end of 2022. A spokesperson for Afterpay, which has agreed to buy out from Square Inc., the payments firm of Twitter Inc. founder Jack Dorsey, said it supported any approach that takes into account consumer benefits from the innovation and competition Afterpay has brought to the market. Spokespeople for Apple and Google were not immediately available for comment, as is the rule with Apple and Google. They always wait to see how things are going to play out, and then they bring in their big guns to negotiate and lobby at the highest level of government. So let's just see how this one plays out. It's very interesting, but as I've said many times before, I just do not see global central banks giving up their sovereignty of control of the creation of currency and credit in sovereign nations around the world. So let's just see how this one plays out. Another piece of financial news is that Kogan has been knocked off of the ASX 200. It hits a new low, and this came from Power Retail. All eyes on Kogan as the share price plummet leads to its removal from the ASX 200. What does this mean for e-com in general? In January 2021, Kogan shares hit a high of 2167. On Monday, it closed at 720, a 52-week low, in response to the announcement last Friday by the S&P Dow Jones that it was removing Kogan from the ASX 200 effective prior to the opening of trading on 20 December as a result of its quarterly review. And due to market capitalization, Kogan is no longer at a level that makes it one of the 200 largest companies on the ASX. Now, this harkens back to the supply chain issues we've been talking about right throughout this whole episode, and that is that Kogan has been struggling on the share market after facing post-lockdown related inventory struggles earlier in the year. The company has tried to reassure investors that surplus stock was no longer a challenge after its full year results announcement back in August. And when questioned about whether it made the right call with stock provisioning, the response was that it would let investors decide. And it appears investors have indeed decided, and the consequences are now being felt. So we have, on one hand, we have Amazon, and we have Target, and we have all these other major national and international brands trying to ramp up their stock capability and ramp up their stock holding and ramp up their logistics prowess worldwide. And here we have Kogan not having an issue with not enough stock, but the market deciding that they have too much stock that they may not be able to sell and penalizing them for it in terms of their share price with a massive sell-off. And it also called out in the same article that Kogan's woes aren't exclusive to the marketplace, with Booktopia also hitting a new low, closing at 185 on Monday, and it's far from its high of 299 back in August. It's perhaps a surprising underperformance given the company's positive outlook and strong growth prospects. So both Booktopia and Kogan getting absolutely smashed on the share market in Australia. So let's just see how they do. You know, I don't suspect that either of these brands are going to have too much issue in the medium to long term. I suspect that they'll be in demand for the ride, for the duration. They're both very well run businesses. They both are hitting, rough patches in certain respects, just like all brands are facing around the world. So I suspect that this will ultimately end up being a bit of a blip on the radar, but it's interesting to watch how exactly the market is reacting to different behavior and different performance regionally around the world by these mega retailers. Now, the final piece of news for the day, we have podcast episode 108, which was building the e-commerce marketplace of the future with Jason Wyatt from Marketplacer, co-founder of Marketplacer and executive chair. And that dropped yesterday, 9th of December. So go and check it out. If you're not subscribed to the At the Coalface podcast, please go and check it out on every single podcast engine out there. Go ahead and subscribe. Go ahead and go ahead and support us wherever you can. Share it with your friends. Share it with your family if you like what we do and how we do it. And obviously, what I try to do is always try to ask the questions that I think you would want to know of these major technology platform vendors. If you were interviewing them, if you were talking to them, what are the questions that you would want to know the answers to? What are the pressing questions from the market? I try to do that myself. I try to think like someone in the market that was wanting to learn about this platform, perhaps maybe even taking on this platform into their commerce stack, and what that might look like for them and the questions that they would want answered before they would be able to do that. So go and check out podcast episode 108 at the Coalface podcast, building the e-commerce marketplace of the future with Jason Wyatt, Marketplacer. It has been an absolute pleasure to have you along for the ride today. And as I said, we had some challenges last week with LinkedIn not taking our live stream. So we had to upload it as a live stream after the fact, but it looks like we're able to get it uploaded in the end. And as I said before, sorry for the microphone. I had it quite high when I first started this broadcast. So hopefully you're actually able to hear me at all in the first part of this broadcast. But anyways, thank you Thank you for being with me along for the ride. It is fantastic always to have you guys with me. It is fantastic to have your attention. I really, really appreciate it. Couldn't appreciate it more. As we're getting closer to Christmas, I know everybody is very, very busy. That's being reflected in some of the numbers that I'm seeing on my content and everything else. A little bit lower engagement as we're getting closer to Christmas. I think everybody is run off their feet and they're not in the headspace to be thinking about content too much at this time. But I expect over the, just after Christmas and into January, I expect people to have a lot more time on their hands as they're taking holidays. And I suspect that engagement with content to pick back up again. So I really, really enjoy any time that you choose to spend with me and engaging with my content. And I look forward to continuing to do my very, very best to bring the best content from the e-com, omni-channel, and retail tech space to your inbox, to your door, to your social media platforms, and to your podcast engine of choice. Have a fantastic weekend, everyone, and I look forward to catching up with you next Friday, which will be the 17th of December, 2021. Speak to you soon. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.